The first hum wasn't a hum at all, but a whisper, barely there, like the wind sighing through dry grass. Then it grew, a low, mournful tune rising from the old well in the yard, seeping into Jebediah's bones. He'd seen plenty of things out here under the big sky, but never a well that sang. Not like this. And as the family gathered, their faces lit by the lantern's glow, he felt a cold dread creep up his spine. Someone was lying, and he knew, deep in his gut, that this song wouldn't end well. The scent of dust and pine hung heavy in the evening air, a familiar comfort for Jebediah, whose life revolved around the steady rhythm of the Double R Ranch. He sat on the worn porch swing, the wood creaking a complaint beneath his weight, watching the last slivers of sunlight fade beyond the distant peaks. His old coonhound, Rufus, snored softly at his feet, a furry, contented lump. This was his peace, a hard-earned quiet after years of rambling. But then, a sound, thin and reedy at first, began to drift from the direction of the old stone well. It wasn't the wind, not a coyote's howl, but something else entirely, a low melodic hum that seemed to vibrate in the very air. Jebediah frowned, his brow furrowing beneath the brim of his hat. The well hadn't made a peep in his lifetime, just sat there, a silent sentinel for generations. Rufus, sensing the shift in his master's mood, lifted his head, a low rumble in his chest. The hum grew, a sustained note that seemed to carry an unspoken sorrow. It was unsettling, like a familiar landscape suddenly rearranged. Jebediah pushed himself up, the swing protesting with a louder groan. His hand instinctively went to the worn leather of his revolver holster, a habit born of a lifetime spent where trouble often rode in unannounced. He wasn't scared, not exactly, but a prickle of unease snaked its way up his neck. This was more than just a strange sound. It felt like a warning. He had a choice: dismiss it as a trick of the wind or investigate. But a cowboy's instinct, honed by countless silent nights and unseen dangers, told him to follow the hum. He started walking towards the well, the strange melody growing louder with every step, and with it, the unsettling certainty that his quiet life was about to be irrevocably disrupted. The hum from the well had swelled into a full-blown song, a haunting, wordless melody that echoed off the ranch buildings. It wasn't a sweet tune, but one laced with a mournful, almost accusing quality. Jebediah stood by the stone lip, his gaze fixed on the black depths below. The water, usually still, seemed to shimmer, reflecting the dim light of the rising moon with an unnatural glow. What incarnation is that? Jebediah turned to see his cousin, Maeve, standing a few feet away, her face pale in the moonlight. Maeve, all sharp angles and quick wit, usually had a quip for everything, but now her voice was hushed, almost fearful. She'd arrived that afternoon for the annual family gathering, a tradition Jebediah usually tolerated more than enjoyed. "Beats me, Maeve. Never heard it sing before." "They say the well hums when someone's lying," she murmured, her eyes wide. "When a truth is buried." Jebediah snorted. "Old wives' tales." But the hum, it pressed against his ears, a relentless truth. The entire family, all gathered for their rare reunion, was now drawn to the well, a circle of hushed voices and uneasy glances. His uncle Silas, a man who rarely showed emotion, stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. Cousin Thomas, usually boisterous, was uncharacteristically quiet. The air thickened with unspoken accusations, with the weight of old secrets. Every relative present seemed to shrink under the well's musical scrutiny. Then, a sudden sharp note, like a discordant chord, ripped through the melody. It was followed by a chilling, almost human sigh. A gasp went through the assembled family. The hum faded, then surged again, louder, more insistent, and laced with an undeniable fury. Jebediah felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just a strange occurrence. It was an interrogation. He saw Maeve exchange a quick, fearful glance with Thomas. A ripple of tension ran through the group. Jebediah knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this song was calling out a lie. And as the well song intensified, a cold dread washed over him. In the morning, one of them would be gone. He had to figure out who was lying and what they were hiding before the well claimed its due. He felt time slipping away, each note of the well song a stark reminder of the looming truth. The well song faded into an unsettling silence, leaving an echo of tension in its wake. Dawn broke, painting the eastern sky in hues of bruised purple and angry red. But the beauty was lost on the family gathered around the porch. Thomas was gone. His bed was empty, his horse still in the stable, but his saddlebag, usually meticulously packed, was missing. A collective dread settled over them, thicker than the morning mist. Jebediah felt a familiar cold ache in his chest, a ghost of a memory from years past. He stood by the well, his gaze lost in its silent depths, the stone cool beneath his hand. The absence of Thomas and the well's sudden quietude brought back a similar morning decades ago. He was just a boy then, maybe 10, when his own older brother, Caleb, vanished. One moment, they were squabbling over a fishing pole by the creek. The next, Caleb was simply gone. No trace, no explanation, just an empty space where a brother used to be. The family had spun tales of him running off, of a wild spirit, but Jebediah always knew there was more to it, a secret buried deep. Just like the truths the well was supposed to expose. The memory was a dull throb, a constant companion that had shaped him into the quiet, observant man he was now. He'd learned to trust his gut, to read the unspoken, because the spoken words had often been lies. Maeve, her eyes red-rimmed, approached him cautiously. He wouldn't just leave Jebediah, not without a word. Her voice cracked. "People do things, Maeve," he said, his voice flat, the memory of Caleb a bitter taste in his mouth. He thought of the accusations the well song had carried, the glances exchanged. Was Thomas hiding something, or was he a victim? The ranch, once a haven, now felt like a cage, the air thick with suspicion. The familiar plains outside beckoned, a vast open space where secrets could hide. But a part of him, the part that remembered Caleb, felt a pull towards the unknown, towards the uncomfortable truth. He could ride out, put distance between himself and this family drama. Or he could stay and face whatever this singing well had unearthed. The ghost of Caleb whispered in his ear, a silent plea to uncover the hidden things. His heart urged him to stay, to finally face the lies that had haunted his family for generations. His reason, however, screamed at him to run. The sun beat down, relentless, as Jebediah found himself at the old, abandoned miner shack, a place no one had visited in years. The hum, faint but undeniable, had drawn him there, a new song, this one laced with a desperate urgency. Inside, amid the dust and cobwebs, sat Uncle Silas. His face was etched with lines Jebediah hadn't noticed before, and his hands, usually steady, trembled as he held an old, tarnished locket. Silas. Jebediah's voice was low, devoid of accusation, yet heavy with unspoken questions. The shack felt smaller, the air charged with an unbearable weight. Silas didn't look up. He knew. Thomas. He came asking about things. His voice was a raspy whisper. Things from long ago. What things? Jebediah pressed, his gaze fixed on the locket. A sudden, sharp hum resonated from outside the shack, vibrating through the flimsy walls. The well was singing again, closer than ever. Silas finally met his eyes, and in them, Jebediah saw a lifetime of pain, regret, and fear. Caleb. He didn't run off, Jebediah. He stumbled onto something he shouldn't have seen. Something I did. The words hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. I was trying to cover my tracks. A foolish gamble, back when this mind was active. Caleb saw it, and I panicked. I pushed him. He fell. down the old mine shaft. The confession was a physical blow. Jebediah staggered back, the breath knocked from his lungs. Caleb. All these years, the unanswered questions, the quiet grief, the lies. And Silas, his own uncle, the man who had taught him to ride, to shoot, to live off the land. The well outside sang, a furious, wailing cry, as if finally unleashing all the buried truths. Everything he thought he knew, everything he believed, shattered into a million pieces. He saw the empty mine shaft in his mind's eye, a gaping maw of deceit. He could feel the tension radiating from Silas, a man cornered by his own past. For a moment, all seemed lost, the weight of this revelation threatening to crush him. But then, a new sound cut through the well's lament. Mav's desperate shout from outside. "Thomas! He's in the mine! He went down to look for proof." The air in the mine shaft was thick with dust and the metallic tang of old earth. Jebediah's leg throbbed where a loose rock had scraped him on the way down, a dull ache that mirrored the one in his heart. The singing well had gone silent the moment Maeve cried out, as if its purpose had been served. Now, only the echoes of his own labored breaths and the distant dripping of water disturbed the oppressive quiet. Silas, broken and defeated, sat slumped against a support beam, his confession hanging heavy between them. Thomas was further down, trapped, and the darkness of the mine seemed to swallow all hope. Jebediah felt the familiar, crushing weight of solitude settle over him. Even with Silas nearby, the vast, unforgiving silence of the earth felt like a personal companion, just as it always had. His life had been a solitary journey, marked by loss and the quiet pursuit of an unspoken truth. He thought of Rufus, waiting patiently back at the ranch, a loyal shadow. He thought of the empty spaces in his life, the ones Caleb had left behind. All his instincts screamed for him to just leave, to let the mine claim its secrets, to walk away from the bitter tangle of family lies. But then, a faint glint caught his eye, barely visible in the gloom. An old leather-bound journal, half buried beneath a pile of rocks. It was Caleb's, the same journal he'd carried everywhere, filled with childish scrawls and observations. A chance, a risky one, to finally understand. A chance to give Caleb and himself some peace. He could ignore it, focus on getting Thomas out, or he could risk everything to unearth the final, damning piece of the puzzle. The well's silence, once a sign of revelation, now felt like a challenge. He had to choose the immediate safety of Thomas, or the deeper, more dangerous truth buried with Caleb. With a deep breath, he moved towards the journal, a desperate hope mingled with a profound dread. Jebediah emerged from the mine shaft, blinking in the harsh morning light, the dust of the earth clinging to his clothes and soul. Thomas was safe, albeit shaken, the old journal clutched in his hand. Silas, finally facing the consequence of his actions, had turned himself over to the authorities. The well, silent now, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its song finally done. But nothing was as it had been. The ranch, once a place of quiet refuge, now carried the heavy weight of revealed truths and broken trust. Jebediah looked at the journal, its pages brittle with age, filled with Caleb's innocent observations. And then, near the end, a chilling account of Silas's reckless gambling and the fateful accident that had taken his brother's life. The secret, finally brought to light, was a bitter victory. There was no joy in it, only a profound sense of loss and the quiet ache of a wound that would never truly heal. Maeve approached him, her face tear-stained but resolute. "What now, Jebediah?" she asked, her voice soft. He looked out at the vast expanse of the land, the endless sky above. The world hadn't stopped for their small family drama. The cattle still needed tending. The fences still needed mending. He was no longer just the quiet cowboy, a solitary figure content with his own company. He carried the weight of a revealed past, the burden of a truth unearthed by a singing well. He had faced his deepest fear, the ghost of his brother, and found not vengeance, but a difficult, undeniable peace. He might ride away one day, seek a new horizon, but for now, the ranch, with all its sorrows and its fragile hope, was home. He ran a hand over the worn leather of his saddle. "Now," he said, his voice a low rumble, "we keep living, and we remember." That well, it sang for more than just a lie. It sang for all of us, for the stories we bury, and the truths that always, eventually, find their way to the light.